Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Uttir Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 13, Description of the Descendants of Dhruv Maharaj. Text number 38 onwards. Sa tat punsavanam raggi prashya pativrādade garbham kal upavritte kumaram sushve apraja. Although the queen had no son after eating that food which had the power to produce a male child, she became pregnant by her husband, and in due course of time she gave birth to a son. So the sacrifice went on, and Maharaj Anga received this pot of sweet rice from a divine personality that appeared from the fire of the sacrifice, and he gave that sweet rice to his queen. So it is said, although she was not qualified, but still Maharaj was very liberal, and he gave her the sweet rice, and she ate, and later on, in due course of time, she gave birth to a son. Among the 10 kinds of purificatory processes, one is punsavanam, in which the wife is offered some prasad or remnants of foodstuff offered to Lord Vishnu, so that after sexual intercourse with the husband she may conceive a child. Sabal eva purusho matam maham anuvritah adharma shodbhavam mrityum tena bhavad adharmika. That boy was born partially in the dynasty of irreligion. His grandfather was death personified, and the boy grew up as his follower. He became a greatly irreligious person. So grandfather is the maternal grandfather. So her mother's father was death personified. Not Yamaraj, but death, Mrityu. And that's why he took the sanskar from his mother, and he was very cruel. He became a greatly irreligious person. The child's mother, Sunita, was a daughter of death personified. Generally, the daughter receives the qualifications of her father, and the son acquires those of the mother. So according to the axiomatic truth that things equal to the same thing are equal to one another, the child born of King Anga became the follower of his maternal grandfather. According to Smriti Shastra, a child generally follows the principles of his maternal uncle's house. Naranam Matula Karma means that a child generally follows the qualities of his maternal family. If the maternal family is very corrupt or sinful, the child, even though born of a good father, becomes a victim of the maternal family. According to Vedic civilization, therefore, before the marriage takes place, an account is taken of both the boys' and girls' families. If according to astrological calculation, the combination is perfect, then marriage takes place. Sometimes, however, there is a mistake and family life becomes frustrating. So this thing that son takes the qualities from his mother and girl takes the qualities from her father, the genetics, now they are figuring it out, that this is what happens, and this is what was written by Srila Vedvyas 5,000 years ago, and it's written down 5,000 years ago, but otherwise it was known since times immemorial. But the modern science is now figuring it out. And that is why astrological calculation, Prabhupada says, is required when a boy and girl get married. Not just that they met each other in the college and they fell in love and then they get married. Astrological calculation was necessary to make sure all the points are correct. well, the match is correct. But Prabhupada says sometimes, however, there is a mistake and family life becomes frustrating. So sometimes maybe Krishna makes arrangement. He wants to make it frustrating. I'm pretty sure in this case, between marriage of Maharaja Anga and Sunita, astrological charts were mentioned, charts were matched, but still the family life was frustrating. It appears that King Anga did not get a very good wife in Sunita because she was a daughter of death personified. Sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional life. It appears that by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, King Anga, although a pious devotee, got an unfortunate wife like Sunita and later on a bad child like Vena. But the result was that he got complete freedom from the entanglement of family and left home to go back to Godhead. Well, it can happen the other way around also. Maybe wife is a devotee and the husband is not, and sometimes Krishna makes arrangements so the wife makes more progress in spiritual life. So, anyway, for a devotee, it's always Krishna's arrangement, whether the marital status is okay or not, or going very good or not going very good, whatever the case may be. Sasharasanam udyamya mrigyur gocharaha hantya sadhur mrigan dinan veno asaviti rojana. After fixing his bow and arrow, the cruel boy used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill innocent deer. And as soon as he came, all the people would cry, "Here comes cruel Vena, here comes cruel Vena." Kshatriyas are allowed to hunt in the forest for the purpose of learning the killing art, not to kill animals for eating or for any other purpose. The Kshatriya kings were sometimes expected to cut off the head of a culprit in the state. For this reason, Kshatriyas were allowed to hunt in the forest. Because this son of King Anga, Vena, was born of a bad mother, he was very cruel. And he used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill the animals. All the neighboring inhabitants would be frightened by his presence, and they would call, "Here comes Vena, here comes Vena." So from the beginning of his life, he was fearful to the citizens. So they're not chanting his name and very happily. They were afraid of him. And we will read more about what he used to do. Akride kridato balan vyasyan ati darunah prasya nir anukroshaha pashrum maram amareyat. The boy was so cruel that while playing with young boys of his age, he would kill them very mercilessly, as if they were animals meant for slaughter. So just imagine he's playing cricket or football with the boys of his age, and he would just kill them. Wow. And kill them very mercilessly. Tam vichakshya khalam putram shasner vividhar nripaha yada na shasitum kalpo dhrisham asita sudurmanaha. After seeing the cruel and merciless behavior of his son Vena, King Anga punished him in different ways to reform him, but was unable to bring him to the path of gentleness. He thus became greatly aggrieved. So he could not reform him, could not rectify his behavior. Prayanabhyarchito devo ye praja grihe medina kadpate bhritam dukkham yena vindanti durbharam. The king thought to himself, persons who have no son are certainly fortunate. They must have worshipped the Lord in the previous life so that they would not have to suffer the unbearable unhappiness caused by a bad son. So a bad son could be the cause of terrible unhappiness It's better not to have a son, or not to have a child for that matter. यतः पापीयसी कीर्तिरधर्मश्च महान् नृणाम् यतो विरोधः सर्वेषाम् yet adhir anantakah. A sinful son causes a person's reputation to vanish. His irreligious activities at home cause irreligion and quarrel among everyone, and this creates only endless anxiety. It is said that a married couple must have a son, otherwise the family life is void. But a son born without good qualities is as good as a blind eye. A blind eye has no use for seeing, but it is simply unbearably painful. The king therefore thought himself very unfortunate to have such a bad son. And later on, there's another story of a king who didn't have a son, and he was, by the mercy of Parvat Muni, he got a son. And he was asked to name his son as Harshashoka. And there, it's written in the purport that if we have a very big enemy, or an enemy who just died without taking proper revenge in a previous life, he will take the birth as a son in this life, as our son in this life. So he can continue taking his revenge, and now he is a son, so you cannot even punish him the way you would punish your enemy. So cycle of karma is so terrible, and we cannot run away from our karmas. So it is better not to have animosity with anybody, because if he is born as a son in my family, in our family, and then I got to deal with them day in and day out, that would be terrible. But that's what happens. Kastam prajapadesham moho bandhanam atmanah pandito bahu manyeta yadartha kleshada griha. Who, if he is considerate and intelligent, would desire such a worthless son? Such a son is nothing but a bond of illusion for the living entity, and he makes one's home miserable. Kadpatyam varam manye sadpatya chucham padat nirvidyeta grihan martyo yat klesha nivaha griha. Then the king thought a bad son is better than a good son, because a good son creates an attachment for home, whereas a bad son does not. A bad son creates a hellish home, from which an intelligent man naturally becomes very easily detached. So, because Maharaj Vena was a self-realized soul, so he is thinking like that. Otherwise, it's a hellish life for the father, or for the parents actually, if they have a bad son. And that too, just imagine, this is a story from Satyuga. So even in Satyuga, these things used to happen. Not very often, but still they were happening. In Kali Yuga, it is happening so often. It has become pretty much a norm these days. The king began to think in terms of attachment and detachment from one's material home. According to Prahlad Maharaj, the material home is compared to a blind well. If a man falls down into a blind well, it is very difficult to get out of it and begin life again. Prahlad Maharaj has advised that one give up this blind well of home life, as soon as possible, and go to the forest to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he compared the family life to a blind well, andhakupam. But that's a material family life. There could be grihastha ashram also. So if as soon as we make our life as spiritual as possible by chanting and by having the deities as home and serving the deities, preparing prasadam for the deities, doing kirtan at home, try to make it as spiritual or as close to temple as possible. Then that home is like a Vaikuntha. But if it is not, then it's like a blind well. Why a blind well? Andakupa. Andakupa means there's no way out from a blind well. It's all dark and there's no way out. According to Vedic civilization, this giving up of home by vanaprastha and sannyas is compulsory. But people are so attached to their homes that even up to the point of death, they do not like to retire from home life. King Anga, therefore, thinking in terms of detachment, accepted his bad son as a good impetus for detachment from home life. He therefore considered his bad son his friend, since he was helping him become detached from his home. Ultimately, one has to learn how to detach oneself from attachment to material life. Therefore, if a bad son, by his bad behavior, helps a householder to go away from home, it's a boon. So it's just a matter of how we look at it. Otherwise, there are thousands and thousands, maybe more families, they're just fighting, continuously fighting at home. It's a hellish life, actually. It's very hellish. Text 47. Evam sa nirvin mana nripo grihan nishita uttaya mahodayo dayat alabdha nidro anupalakshito nribhir hitva gato vena subham prasuptam. Thinking like that, King Anga could not sleep at night. He became completely indifferent to household life. Once, therefore, in the dead of the night, he got up from the bed and left Vena's mother, his wife, who was sleeping deeply. He gave up all attraction for his greatly opulent kingdom, and unseen by anyone, he very silently gave up his home and opulence and proceeded towards the forest. In this verse, the word Mahodayad, Mahodayodayat indicates that by the blessings of a great soul, one becomes materially opulent. But when one gives up attachment to material wealth, that should be considered an even greater blessing from the great souls. It was not a very easy task for the king to give up his opulent kingdom and young, faithful wife, but it was certainly a great blessing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that he could give up the attachment and go out to the forest without being seen by anyone. There are many instances of great souls leaving home in this way in the dead of night, giving up attachment for home, wife, and money. So for a king, it's very difficult to give up the opulent kingdom. And although wife was daughter of death personified, but she was young, beautiful, and faithful wife. Still, because king was not happy with the son, he just thought this is a good time for me to leave everything and go to the forest. Because he just developed complete detachment from the kingdom, from the family life, from the opulence. Because he was not at all happy, he forgot about happiness, not peaceful. And he tried to rectify his son, but the son would not give up his cruel behavior. And Prabhupada said there are many instances of great souls leaving home in this way in the dead of the night. Many, many great souls. Bharat Maharaj left, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, and there's so many others. In fact, Pandavas, as soon as they heard Krishna has left, he has unmanifested his pastimes, they all left, including Draupadi. Maharaj Parikshit, as soon as he heard of the courts, he left. So many great souls. Because they understand the real real goal of life is self-realization, not just sitting at home and try to make our old age comfortable. See, this is the beauty of Vedic scriptures. In other, like here in America, so there is no concept of going to the forest for self-realization. There's none. It's all about eat, drink, and be merry philosophy, and do pious activities. So that's the philosophy here. So, and what happens when you're old? Either you're left in the old age homes, and old age homes, even the people who take care of old people there, they're not trained spiritually, and it's not a part of their job. So the old people do what? They sit at old age homes and then they try to play card games, watch TV, or watch some other games, or do some other activities, and nothing spiritual at all. Nothing. In fact, these old people, old and retired people, because they have money and the government also provides money for the old people. And so what do? They know every month they will get a paycheck. So many times they also go for gambling. And in all these big gambling places, you see many old people just wasting the money away, and time, and their energy, and their consciousness. Why? Because the training is not there. When they were young, there was no training. So how can they pick up anything new when they are old? There's no way. And pick up something spiritually enlivening. There's no way. The mind does not just automatically go towards the spiritual practices. One has to train himself. And that too when he is young. That is the best time to train the mind for something spiritual or something out of ordinary. That is why it's very, very important to take up the process and to teach our children the same process, the right process. It's difficult. They're not going to take it up seriously or easily. But still, if we teach them somehow or other, then sooner or later they'll take it up. Somehow. Krishna will make the arrangement. But if you don't teach them, it's very difficult that at old age somebody will take it up. Vigyai nirvidya gatam patim praja purohitam ati suhrid ganadaya vichikya urvayamati shokakatara yatha nigudam purusham kuru yoginah. When it was understood that the king had indifferently left home, all the citizens, priests, ministers, friends, and people in general were greatly aggrieved. They began in search for him all over the world, just as a less experienced mystic searches out the supersoul within himself. The example of searching for the supersoul within the heart by the less intelligent mystics is very instructive. The absolute truth is understood in three different features, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such kuyogina, or less intelligent mystics, can by mental speculation reach the point of the impersonal Brahman, but they cannot find the Supersoul who is sitting within each living entity. When the king left, it was certain that he was staying somewhere else. But because the citizens did not know how to find him, they were frustrated like the less intelligent mystics. So king was alive and he was staying somewhere else, but citizens could not find him. They tried to look everywhere. And it is said they began to search for him all over the world. They could not find him. So obviously he didn't have any plans of coming back. Alakshanta padvim prajapater hatodhyamah prati upsritya te purim rishin sametan abhivandya sashravo Nyavedayan Paurav Bhartri Viplavam. When the citizens could not find any trace of the king, after searching for him everywhere, they were very disappointed and they returned to the city, where all the great sages of the country assembled because of king's absence. With tears in their eyes, the citizens offered respectful obeisances and informed the sages in full detail that they were unable to find the king anywhere. So that is when they put King Vena on the throne, and he became the king of the whole world. So anyway, so here ends the 13th chapter. So tomorrow we'll start at the 14th chapter. See, anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna.
Thank you so much for the class. I have a small inquiry. This King Anga, he left the house or kingdom before he reached to the Vanprastha age or during the time of Grihastha ashram only?
Yeah, before Vanprastha, because he was uh, very much tired of hearing about Vena's activities.
Okay, because I was listening to a lecture of, Prabhupada. Once Prabhupada was mentioned that one of his devotee, a brahmachari, requested him that I want to get married, Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada said, okay. Then he made him to get married. And then after a few years, the brahmachari again came back and then he said, Prabhupada, I want to take sannyas. Just after spending few years. Then Prabhupada started chastising him, saying that the problem is here not at all Krishna consciousness. Because by doing such kind of action, you are spoiling the other person's life as well. So in this case also, I just wanted to make sure, King Anga, if he had married, so the even the lady was, uh, if if I have read it, so she was also loyal. So in that case, after leaving the home, so he, how can we, see this situation or scenario? So he didn't spoil her life
Well, she was looked
by
after
leaving
by
the house.
she was she was looked after by her son Vena. See, we cannot compare what Prabhupada did with his disciples or his disciple did with Prabhupada. This is a different society. Many disciples of Prabhupada in the beginning they took sannyas when they were in their teens actually. Jayapatak Maharaj, he became sannyasi when he was 19 years old only. Of course, he was not married before, but many other disciples take sannyas in their 20s. So nowhere it is mentioned one should take sannyas when they are in 20s. But Prabhupada gave understanding the importance of preaching. But in this case, yes, because the disciple was not fixed up, either Grihastha or sannyasi, because they think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. That's the problem. So yes, the instruction was correct. The one should become Krishna conscious, but not in this case. Maharaj Anga was already self-realized soul. Somehow he married Sunita, and the son was born, and the son made his life miserable. So he had to leave. And of course, this is all a prelude to because Krishna wanted Prithu Maharaj to appear. And now Prithu Maharaj will appear. He is the son of Maharaj Vena. So here Krishna is making the arrangements, and in our case, we try to do all the hanky-panky stuff.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question or comment? Okay, so you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Jai
Jai
Srila
Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Jai